Hey YouTube, welcome back to Tinker with Tools. Normally we try and pit tools that are going to at least be competitive with each other, but tonight I'm sorry to say I don't know how competitive this is going to be. We're going to be taking the new XR impact driver from DeWALT and we are going to be going up against the top from Milwaukee and Flex. So let's get into that on Tinker with Tools. So at the end of last year, we got word that DeWALT was going to be having a new XR impact driver coming out. And initially I had some pretty high hopes. They've had a string of really great releases, especially in their impact wrenches and a couple of their drills that got me really excited for the direction DeWALT was heading. So when I finally got my hands on the tool, I have to say I was more than a little let down in that the DeWALT impact driver did not feel like a bad impact driver. It just felt like more of the same that we already had. It wasn't as small as the DeWALT Atomic, it wasn't as fast or strong as the DCF 840, and it didn't have the nice new gear selector that we saw on the impact wrenches. It kind of felt like they had just recycled some of the old parts and put them into a new impact driver, slapped the XR badge out there, and sent it out to market. I have used it a little bit more since that initial test video, and I have to say, it's like a DeWALT impact driver. It's actually pretty decent to use. It's far from a bad impact driver. But when we start talking about comparing it from some of the top impact drivers in terms of speed and power that we have, I think that's where it might come up with a few more holes in its armor as you try and go against those top impacts. All right, so we're going to go ahead and do some standard testing that we do with other impact drivers with these three. We're going to be running through a few different tests so we can see which one is going to be the fastest. And in the case of the DeWALT, I really want to see how competitive it can be against these two, so we can see if it's worth your time to consider it if you're on the DeWALT platform. So let's go ahead and get right to that testing, but first I'm going to go ahead and show you some specs so you can know what we're working with here. First we are going to be starting with just a small 2-inch cabinet screw, tiny little screw, and we are going to be going down into their lowest speed just to kind of show how they work. In each of these I will be holding the trigger fully depressed until the screw is driven flush. For each of these tools we are going to be working with a fully charged 5 amp hour battery. Now obviously the Flex is dealing with a 24 volt battery versus the 18/20 volt batteries the Milwaukee and DeWALT are using. It goes ahead and spins until it gets going, then it stops, almost assesses what's going on, and then moves on and does that. So it doesn't necessarily have that stall in it that the DeWALT has, but it does go ahead and just drive it in a controlled manner. I'd almost say it is probably the fastest of the three. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to be doing three 3.5-inch deck screws. Once again, we'll kind of add those together cumulative style. I will say, because of its lower power, almost, it was easier to drive the DeWALTs flush versus overdriving them a little bit with the Milwaukee. All right, so now let's move on to some more substantial fasteners. All right, and now a 3 1/8 inch GRK. So I think especially early on, we're not going to see a lot of separation between the three impact drivers. I do think that the DeWALT will still lose, and I'll be pleasantly surprised if it doesn't, because that means we'd have a pretty good impact on our hands. But I think the real separation is going to be when we get up into the bigger fasteners and torque, and the torque and speed of the other two really start to make a difference. Okay, now we're going to be going up to a 4-inch GRK. All right, and now we're going to be going on to a 5-inch power lag. right, now going with a 6-inch timber lock. All right, and now we're going with the 6-inch spacks. All right, so now we are going to move up to our 8-inch timber lock. All right, so typically we would stop our testing there, but tonight we're going to push them a little bit further. These are 3/8 inch by 8-inch Spax lag screws. They are definitely beefier than a timber lock. We're going to go ahead and drive these through and see what sort of results we get with that. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. I'm going to go ahead and clean up some of the testing real quick. We'll get back over to the regular bench and we'll kind of go over the results and kind of my thoughts about all three of these impact drivers. All right, so we'll just finish the testing. I'll have shown you the results along the way. If I had to guess a cumulative score, this one is probably 15 to 20% behind the other two. On the smaller fasteners, I don't know that you're going to notice it really. On the larger fasteners, it does start to feel a bit sluggish sometimes when you're driving in some of those bigger fasteners. So now I will stand by what I said last week that I just don't see the appeal of the Speed 1. I get that some people are used to it and that's how they like to use it. The control and overall drive quality on the Milwaukee was actually nicer. So I'd rather it just be a more controlled speed than have that stall and have to wait for it and remember to keep my trigger pressed. Because if I let off the trigger, then I just got to do the whole process again and it just feels like my tool is making the choices instead of me of when to go. So power and speed, I do think this one's down, and that's what we thought going into it. Now, I don't know that it was the bloodbath that I thought it was going to be, where it just felt like these two were just going to destroy it. It certainly wasn't the most competitive race. If you show up to the job site with this, I don't think you're going to ever fail to necessarily do the job, but it's just not going to be the fastest one out there. If that matters to you, then that's worth something. Where I will say that the DeWALT felt nicer than the two of these was in the slow RPM trigger pulls or just trying to barely start the screw or just trying to finesse it in. This definitely felt like it had a nicer trigger on it. Now, I'm not going to go to the extent of saying this is nicer than the Makita or even the Hikoki/Metabo HPT. I do think those two have very nice ergonomics and trigger control. And so I think that's maybe a fair comparison to put this up against is to see how it compares to those. But in terms of these big brutes, this was the more finesse tool to use. And for a lot of people, that might be the impact driver that you choose. So there definitely is a crowd that can benefit from this impact driver. I think the overall reaction to this impact driver may appear to be fairly negative, but what I think it stems from, we had the DeWALT 887 for a number of years, and we watched it get beat by other different impacts across the thing. So then DeWALT had a chance. They announced the 850. We saw the pictures of it, and it felt like it was going to be this incredible, tiny little impact that was going to take the fight to Milwaukee. And it came out, and it was tiny, but it also still lacked the performance. It essentially was an 887 in a smaller package. And then, on top of that, the 840 goes and outperforms it for less money. So if you bought the 850 and then found out about the 840, you can almost feel like there was a little bit of a bait and switch or something confusing going on with the DeWALT lineup. And I think that happened a little bit again with the 845. We went into it expecting something superior to the other DeWALT impact drivers, and what we got was more of the same. Most companies have a pretty clear delineation in what is going to be the best product in their lineup, and DeWALT right now has a little bit of confusion about which one it really is, even though their branding would suggest that it is going to be this one. I do think it's pretty good impact. I think there are going to be people that if you try it, you will probably like it, but it's probably still not going to be competitive with the likes of these. So in a future episode, we are going to put it up against some more precision or more refined impact drivers and see if maybe it fits better with that crowd. So if you have any questions about this, go ahead and leave them in the comments down below. If you like it or don't like it, the thumbs up and thumbs down buttons seem to work just fine for that. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. And if you'd like to, share the channel with someone else so we can go ahead and spread it out there further. That does help it get in front of more eyes with YouTube. I appreciate all the support. Thanks for watching. And until next time, I'll catch you on Tinker with Tools.